Alrighty, so today we have the next K7000 on the Repair-A-Thon. This is going to be K7000 number 2, and it's a 25-inch P538 K7000. So it's I did have to clean this first. This was about as dirty as the other one. It's a couple of videos back. I'll link it down below on how to clean it and everything. But the first thing I noticed after cleaning it was that the fuse is exploded with extreme prejudice. The fuse is kaboomed. So we got something shorted. So we'll figure that out. No big deal. Got lots of videos on what to test on when you have a blown fuse. So fuse is bad. And I think the neck board and the remote board spent some time in water because it's severely corroded. The entire solder mask on this giant trace here is completely gone, and it's been eaten through. The solder mask, that is, not the actual trace, so we're gonna have to do some repair on that. We'll clean it up and paint it, but then all of the solder joints are just horrible. Look at this. All of those joints are just terrible. This one's bent over and cracked. You can see that one's cracked and bent over, and all the rest of them are just oxidized and dirty and just very, very bad. And this here was full of dirt. This was full of dirt inside of here. I had to clean that out as best I could. So that was bad as well. I think this set spent some time sitting in water, and the vertical size pot is broken from shipping. When I got all 5 of these chassis, this was a casualty of shipping, so we'll have to replace that vertical size pot. Now, the rest of these pots don't look too bad. These should clean up fairly easily, but the real problem is going to be cleaning up the backside. So we'll have to pull all the pots out and take the connector out, use the fiberglass pen to clean up all the pads and traces and everything, and then put some paint on here. Some people use fingernail polish. I just like to use paint. I've got this dark green, car vehicle touch-up paint. We'll just use that. It really doesn't matter as long as you clean up the trace, and you could even spray some clear on here, some clear top coat or clear coat on here to just seal it all in. You want to prevent this from being exposed to the air to further corrode, and also to prevent it from shorting out on stuff. So, but we'll take care of that. That's one of the things we'll have to tackle. So I'm actually going to disconnect this and set it aside. Now, the neck board is in much worse shape. All of these pots are going to have to be replaced. Every one of these pots is so heavily corroded that you can't even turn them. I tried to turn them with a screwdriver and completely just snapped the ears off the pot. That one, that one, that one. So all these pots are so heavily corroded you can't even turn them. The plastic ears just snapped off the pot. So these are all bad. Fortunately, I have enough of these on hand to be able to repair them, or replace them, I should say. So I have the cutoff pots, which are 2K, and I have the drive pots, which are 200 ohms. So the drive pots are 200 ohms, and the cutoffs are 2K ohm. So I have enough on hand to fix those, or replace them, I should say. I got the cap kit, and the last thing I noticed is that this cap got hit with such ferocity that it physically damaged the casing of it, and it ripped the leg right out of it. So this got hit pretty hard. Not sure how or why, but it does look like it's had a cap kit in the past. In typical fashion, they changed all the caps except the 10 microfarad bipolar caps. So it does appear someone has at least capped it in the past, but they did not change the bipolar caps, which is par for the course. The main chassis here isn't too bad. I don't see any evidence of real, corrosion or anything like that on here, other than, the neck board and the remote board sitting in water. But otherwise, the main board here isn't too bad. The bottom isn't too bad. There's no, solder joints that are lifted or broken, or bad pads or traces or things like that. R89 is successfully soldered in nice fashion. R101 is pretty good. So I don't think this is a very long life 7000. I think this probably failed somewhat early in its life, and someone just set it aside in a box or somewhere, and it just let it go to waste. So we're going to have to fix this one too. So now that we've gone over the issues with the neck board pots and the remote board pot being broken and busted capacitors, I think it's time to go ahead and start troubleshooting. So we'll set the neck board aside for now. We don't need it for what we're doing. And I like to, for the remote boards like this that have the wires soldered to the board, now these have the pins, the header pins going through the board, but even still, when I work on this, I like to take a zip tie here and zip tie the harness through the mounting hole. That way the stress is on the mounting hole connection here. I'll show you here shortly. Let me get this on here. So I like to put a zip tie here so the stress when I move this around is right here and not on the wires themselves to break off. So get in the habit of doing that when you work on these, because that will prevent you from having headaches in the future. I have vertical collapse, or I have horizontal collapse, or I have half collapse, or some type of problem. I can't adjust vertical size, or you'll find that when flipping the chassis over and back and forth and moving it around doing all your work, you have broken a wire off of the header there. So to save yourself some trouble, just go ahead and zip tie it on there and you won't got to worry about that. All right, so the preamble is over. We know the condition. Why is the fuse blown? Well, let's start with the HOT and check that. Meter and diode mode. We'll flip this over. Negative lead on the collector, and to the base and emitter should be 0.47 voltage drop or so. And so let's see. Oh, shorted and shorted. Now that we know that that's shorted, that's probably the cause of our fuse, but we'll check our voltage regulator also. But I want to also check C36 to show you an example of what I'm talking about in the previous video. So in the previous K7000, we had one C36 that had 4 legs. This one has 2 separate, well, it's a C36 and they're not both C36. One of them is C36, the other one is a different number, and I'll be damned if I can't recall what it is. C36 and there's too much dirt down in there, I can't see it. Let's see if we can. C36 and C69. So C69 is the one under the heatsink, and C36 is the one that's by the yoke connector. So 36 and 69. So when you have the 2 separate caps like that, you want to read across diagonal. It's the same exact way you read it if it had a 4-leg C36, but you'll notice here that if we go diagonal this direction, we read shorted. If we go diagonal this direction, we don't read shorted. We get our voltage drop because it's not attached. This leg here is not attached to C36. I'm sorry, the HOT. This leg of C36, C69, yeah. It gets confusing because the 4-leg C36 is all tied together. Internal to this capacitor is all tied together. That's why it will read shorted this way and this way if the HOT is shorted. But in this case, we don't get a shorted C69 reading because C69 is not connected to C36. So hopefully that makes sense. So when you have the 2 separate ones, one of them is going to read, C36 is going to read shorted because the HOT is shorted, but C69 will not. So if you have a shorted HOT and a shorted C36, which of those 2 components is shorted? The HOT or C36? The only way to know is to remove one of them from the circuit, because you could have a shorted HOT and not a shorted C36 and vice versa. So we need to remove one of these components from the circuit, and the easiest one to do would be to remove C36. Now the likelihood of C36 actually being shorted is very low, but we'll remove it anyway, and just for a show and tell, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Okay, C36 has been desoldered there, and we'll just lift it out of circuit. Okay, so now C36 is out. As we can see, C36 is out. I moved it too far. So there it's in circuit, and we can just lift it right out. So now with that out, let's see if our HOT still reads shorted. I bet it will. It does. and the trace and everything. This way, yeah. So C36 is not shorted, it's our HOT. So we can put C36 back in. If we took C36 out and we no longer read shorted this way, then we know that C36 was shorted and not the HOT. So we'll go ahead and put that back in. Okay, now let's go ahead and keep going here. Let's check our voltage regulator. The easiest way to check the voltage regulator is to just go to the resistor, the B+ resistor. We should get 180 ohms or so. And I will say that if the HOT is shorted or C36 is shorted, it's not going to affect the reading on the voltage regulator. The voltage regulator is still going to be 180 ohms across this resistor if the voltage regulator is good. A shorted HOT or C36 will not affect the reading. So if we go to the voltage regulator, we read 1.9 ohms. So our voltage regulator is shorted also. To test it in the more roundabout way, we'll go to diode mode and we go to pin 3 from the right, 1, 2, 3 with the negative lead. Positive lead should be about 0.16 voltage drop, and we get a dead short. So yeah, and that's on the tall, skinny one, not the wide fat one. The wide fat one is pins 1 and 4, as opposed to 3 and 4. So shorted HOT, shorted voltage regulator. Let's test our rectifier diodes. Again, the easiest way to test those is to go to ohms, and R104 should be 15 ohms. If we read like 5 ohms, then one of our rectifier diodes is shorted. So let's see what 104 reads. 15 ohms. So that means our rectifier diode should be good, but we can check them anyway. Good, 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 and good. So yeah, if you read like 4 ohms or 5 ohms on this resistor, it's likely you've got a bad rectifier diode. But since we have 15 ohms and we verified, that's all good. So now R101 should be about 5K in circuit. 4K, that's a bit low, but I'm not too worried about it. R97 should be 200 ohms. $270 on the nosy, okay. R89 should be 3.9K. 3.9. R96 should be 1.8. 1.8. R88 should be 1.8. And 1.7, good enough. Is C38 shorted, our width cap? That's across this one, and we get 1.6 megs, so C38 is fine. Okay, well, let's go to R103. This guy here should be 2.7 ohms. If that's shorted, that could cause HOT to go out. 2.8, actually, I'm sorry. Resistors don't short. If it was open, I should say. If R103 was open, that could cause HOT to go out, voltage regulator, and so forth. So 2.8 ohms is good. So it looks like in our power circuit, we simply have a shorted HOT and a voltage regulator. Now, what would cause that? No clue. It could be any number of things. The flyback does not appear to have been arcing to the frame. There's no evidence of discoloration on the frame. 9 times out of 10, when you have a flyback that has cracked and has shorted to the frame, it's going to take out R91 or R92 or D13 or D14. So let's check R91 and R92. They should be 1.2 ohms. If they're good, it's an indication the flyback isn't really our problem. 1.4, that's fine. And this one here is 1.3. So R91 and R92 are good. D13, I believe, is here. I think it's across right in front. No, they're right next to each other. Okay, so D13 is this one. Okay, that's good. And D14 should be, I think about 0.3 ohms. Or 0.3, I should say. No, they're both the same. Okay, 0.4 and 0.4. All right. So I think our only issue here is the HOT and voltage regulator. So what we'll do is I am going to replace those two components and do a cap kit and a reflow, and then we'll test them again in circuit, and then we'll work on the neck board and the remote board. So looking at this, I really don't see a lot of issues. The solder joints are actually pretty darn good. This does not appear to really need a heavy reflow. The ribbon cable is good, so there's a ribbon cable here that likes to have cracked and bad joints on each end, and those look really good at both sides, right here and there. Those look really good. IC101 and IC101. IC1, IC2 look pretty good. R96 looks pretty good. The yoke is pretty thin right there. D18 is pretty thin right there. But otherwise, it's not too bad. So, yeah, let me see something here. Let's test D18. I normally don't test D18, but D18 is this guy down in here, right there in front of the yoke connector. If D18 is shorted or open, that can cause horizontal problems and take out the HOT for sure. Can we even see that in there? It's right down in there, that guy right there. So negative is going to be to the left here. So we're still in diode mode. And D18 is good. So yeah, it appears our HOT and our voltage regulator are the only two casualties of something. What that is, or what caused it, I don't know. I gotta plug my camera in here. Alright, so let's get the fan going here. And let's desolder this HOT. And we'll get it out and test it out of circuit. Okay. Where, oh where has my screwdriver gone? Oh where can it be? Don't worry, I found it. So we'll grab our needle nose here and we'll grab the other side of the, or grab the nut here I should say. And we will extricate or egress this HOT. Should come right out, and there we go. Does it test bad? Oh, dropped the screwdriver. Does it test bad out of circuit? It does indeed. So HOT, bad. Voltage regulator, let's zap this guy out of here. Okay, are we free and clear? Appears that we are. So let's snag this one out of here. Okay, now if we look at it this way, pins 3 and 4, negative on 3, positive on 4, what do we get? 0.5. we have this in this way, and I go like this. Yeah, that's right. This way. Actually, no, it's this way. I bet these two are shorted. Yeah, okay. So it's pin 3 and 4 going this way when you're looking at it like this direction, but when you have it in like this, it's this way. So pin 3 and 4 shorted. Now we should get 180 ohms or so, like normal with it out. There you go, 182. So HOT and voltage regulator, casualties. So I'm going to get a new HOT and voltage regulator installed and do the cap kit and the reflow, and then I'll come back and we'll work on the neck board and the remote board and go from there. Alright, so the major work is done. The major rework, that is. So I gave it another good wipe down, full cap kit, full reflow. I got all of the corroded pots replaced on the neck board, got them all set to exactly 50%, right at halfway nominal position. Here are all of the rusted and broken ones. So those have been replaced. We got a new HOT and voltage regulator installed. Here are the shorted ones. And that's about it. I'm not going to replace the fuse. We're going to use my 2 amp circuit breaker when we go to test this, just in case something does go bad. We don't take out a $3 fuse. So the only real work left to do is to fix the remote board. So back side of the chassis is all reflowed and clean. I got the solder bridge rework done on R101 that I always do to prevent it from oxidizing in the future. The pad, that is, R89 as well. The bridges I do for the yoke header pins are done to help those not get cracked in the future. The horizontal width coil is reflowed to prevent that from burning up in the future, and reflowed header pins and ICs and a flyback and anything and everything that could possibly need reflowed visually has been reflowed. So all of the work on the main board and the neck board is now done. But let's go ahead and test the HOT now that we have a new one in, and you'll see, of course, what it's supposed to read. Go back to diode mode, and the collector to the base and emitter, we should get 0.45 voltage drop or so, 0.469 and 0.469, so HOT is good. And pin 3 and 4 here on the voltage regulator should be about 0.15 because we're reading through the B+ resistor. 0.152, okay. And the B+ resistor should be 180 ohms now with the voltage regulator in the circuit, and 178, 180. So I think we're going to be good to go, unless something else is bad that's not normally bad, as far as when we test things, not something we don't normally test could be bad. Like if we turn this on and we get high voltage and we get net glow but no raster, it's likely an IC1 issue, so things like that. But that'll be dealt with later. I did have to extend the ground wire, the DAG wire, because it was only this long. It had a butt splice on it that somebody ripped the wire out, so I had to make a little extension here with a splice, and this is our DAG ground now, so that will be hooked up later with no issue. So everything is done on the main board. Let's go ahead and set it aside. And let's focus our attention now on this guy. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is get rid of this vertical size pot because it is broken. Okay. All right. So there's that out of there. And now, do I want to replace, or I'm sorry, do I want to remove all these other pots? It might be a good idea. Then we can clean up all the pads. Yeah, I'm going to desolder and remove the main connector here. I'm going to desolder and remove all of these pots. And then I'll come back here and we'll do the cleanup on this, try and get this thing refreshed. Okay, so here it is all apart. And let's just take our fiberglass pen. And actually, you know what? First, let's just clean this up here. Let's just give it a good wipe down. Okay. This side's pretty good. This side, not so much. Now, worst comes to worst, I have an extra one of these we can use, but I want to just do a little quick surface brush on this. Now I'm not scrubbing with all my life on here. We're just giving it a nice little quick, easy breezy, beautiful CoverGirl rub down here. All right, now that should clean up all of our joints. Okay, and that's looking much better. That pad is gone from whatever was on the pad earlier. The rest of this doesn't seem too bad. So what we're going to do is reinstall all this stuff now. Let's grab our contrast pot. Put it back in place. All right, now let's grab our black level. And solder it back in place. And then our vertical position. Well, this one's fighting me here, not sure why. There we go. Jeez. Not sure why that was so difficult. So there's those three. Vertical hold. Right in. Horizontal position. Right in. All right. All right, so now we need to find a replacement V-size pot, and according to this, V-size is 200 ohms. So we're going to have to go through here and find a 200 ohm pot. This one is 26K, so that's vertical position. All right, let's grab one of these, and we're looking for 200 ohms. We'll just start over here, I guess, since it wants to roll this way. 26K, 10K, 10K, 26K, 500. So I've already stolen the vertical size one from this bunch, it looks like. Set that aside. Here is a complete one. $500K, or 500 I should say. There's 500K. 500. $10K. 20. What the heck? 2K. This is a complete set. How come I can't find the 200 ohm pot? They're all turned up, I think. 500. There it is. I don't know what was going on there the first time. Oh, hang on. I forgot to put my chart back in here. Okay, this should be 200 ohms. Let's just verify again here. 500K and 200. Well, that's weird. I wonder. Let's put it in the center. 50% should be 100 ohms. 200K. No, this is a 500K ohm pot. What in the world is going on here? How come? Let's take all these out again. Maybe it's a loose one here. I don't know what's going on. None of these are labeled like, you know, maybe they are and I'm just a moron. Because that one says 504. This one says 103. Yeah, 10K, so it's not that one. This is a 501. 501. $500 ohms, so it's not that one. Here, I'm just going to cut away and find the right one and come back. Well, that was an effort and a half. Out of all those pots I had, only one of the sets of them had an actual 200 ohm potentiometer here. I must have gone through all of them in the past for other projects, because of all those pots, only one of them was 200. And coincidentally, it actually says 200 on the bottom, 201 there. So, yeah, of all those pots and all those bags and all those lots or assortments, I had one. So we had the right one. It's just a matter of finding it. So we'll set that to about middle, and just so you can see, halfway should be about 100 ohms. Yeah, 95. If we go all the way maximum, should be close to 200. Oh, other side here, hang on. There you go, 196. So, okay, we'll solder that in. Here we go, back to what we were doing. Let's set this back aside. I should have found it beforehand, but that's why this is the amateur channel. All right, now let's make sure we solder all of them in. That's important. And before we go too much further, let's ohm all this stuff out and make sure we don't have any corroded or open traces. Then we'll get this connector back in. So this one should go here. Yeah, this one's part of the ground plane. Yeah, which goes around to where? Here. This is ground. No. Well, it should be. That goes up this way. No, this is ground here. Yes. Okay. So that one's good. That one's good, and that one's good. Okay, now this one goes to here. Good. Ground. Good. This one to there. Good. There. 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 All the way around to there. Ground. And to here. Good. These are tied together, and they run off to what looks like here. This one goes to what looks like there. And this one goes to here. That's the ground. And those are together. Okay, well, it seems like all the connections there are good. So let's put this back in. And in the process of trying to get this out, I broke one of the pins. But that's no big deal. We can solder it back together with no problem. This one's gonna fight me too. There we go. All right. Let's get all those back in. Okay. Now, we'll do this from the side. All right, so I think that'll work. Now the pin that broke was this guy here, and let's see if we can poke this down through here and just solder it back in at the top here. I think that should work. First, let's do it on this side. Okay. Then we'll bend it that way. And we'll rough it up a bit. we'll just simply do that. Successful. Okay. Not sure if you can see, but that's soldered back together, and we're all good on the bottom. So let's give it another cleaning here real quick. And there we have one repaired remote board. Now we gotta break out the paint. So I like to use this automotive paint stuff because it has clear coat on it. So you could use nail polish and things like that. I don't know if nail polish has clear coat on it, but this is designed for cars and exposure to the elements. So I like this because it has the clear coat in it. And we'll just brush this on here. And see if we can make this look fairly good. Try not to cover the solder joints. Just any of the exposed trace is all you really need. And I kind of hit that one, but that's all right. Another added bonus to this is that it dries quick. So within 10 minutes or so, you can handle this all you want to and be good to go. And if you get it on the solder joint, that's fine because, you know, heat will just take it right off, so it's no big deal. But I was trying to avoid the solder joints just to make it look better. But anything with an exposed trace, you want to go ahead and just cover up. It's not going to look good, you know, unless you're Bob Ross or something, but I'm only interested in covering up the exposed traces. So I don't care what it looks like. It's not a beauty contest, it's a functionality thing. And I think that'll work. Like I say, it doesn't look fantastic, but that's all the exposed traces, so we'll call that good. I'm going to use this to wipe off around the edge here because then I'll never get this to unscrew again. Okay, yeah, and well, there you have it. So let's get it on a tube and see if it works, because all of our testing shows now that it should at least power on. Will it power on? And if it does, will it work without any issue? So let's put all this away. And I got the new fuse at the ready, but we're gonna, like I say, we're gonna use this first. So it's hard to really get this installed once it's in the frame. So we're going to try to preemptively install it here, like so. So it's just clipped on the leads like that, and then this is a 2 amp circuit breaker, part number 7277-2-2. The last dash number is the amperage. So if you wanted a 3 amp, it'd be -3, 4 amp would be -4, 5 amp would be -5, so on and so forth. So it's a 2 amp slow blow. That's what this will emulate and keep us from having to blow through fuses. So it's all back together now. There. It's all back together now, so let's hook it up and see what happens. Alright, so we're on a U5000 tube. This is the official tube I use for testing pretty much all of the standard res and U5000 test chassis here when we get the repairs done. So it's a good working tube. It was tired, but I rejuvenated it, so it's a little bit better than it used to be if you're familiar with this tube and what I've been using in the past. So anyway, we're all hooked up. We got anode, neck, yoke, ground, power, video remote, the critical 7. All the color pots are set to center like I mentioned before, and the circuit breaker is right there. So we're going to keep an eye on that, make sure it doesn't pop. Of course, if we turn it on and we get high voltage immediately, it should be okay. But yeah, I think if this does turn on and operate, I'll get this on the tripod and then we can make some adjustments and see how well we can make it look. But for now, let's just go ahead and see if it does turn on. And I mentioned how this is the test tube because you can see it's kind of sitting precariously on just this, actually it's a Hanorex MTC 900E service manual. It's just sitting on there because this is not for a K7000, it's actually for a U5000, so I don't have the right setup for this to be sitting in here securely, so it's kind of haphazardly just sitting on this manual for obvious reasons. Alright, well, enough talk here. Let's turn this on, count 2, 3, cross our fingers and see what happens. 1, 2, 3. Whoa, yep, we got a flyback that is cracked. That was an immediate, obvious thing here. So I'm going to turn this light up, and I wonder if we can have a light show here. I'm going to turn it on here. Let's see where it's leaking from. 1, 2, 3. Whoa, at the top. Okay, so we have a bad flyback. It's leaking from right in there. Let's try this again. Okay, from right in there. Here we go. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Whoa, yep. So, before we blow anything up, let's change that flyback out. Well, it turns out that I used the final and last K7000 flyback that I had on hand for the repair of the K7000 previous to this one, which was the Repair-A-Thon repair number 1. This being number 2. So I didn't have any spare ones. However, just through sheer fortune, I checked the mail and I got a fresh delivery today of stuff from Peter at Arcade Parts and Repair because I knew I was going to have to repair these 5 7000s, and in the assumption that at least 1 or 2 of them are going to have a bad flyback, I ordered 6 replacement flybacks for extra stock. So out of pure happenstance, it just got delivered about an hour ago. So I went to check, and sure enough, it was in the mail. So we have 6 brand new flybacks here. I'm going to see if I can do this one-handed. Likely not. Word of advice, kiddies: never ever cut towards yourself, which is exactly what I'm doing. Okay. It's upside down because I didn't, the label is still on the other side. So there you go, 6 flybacks. I think there's, parts inside. I was going to say there should be some other stuff. If I don't recall. Oh, okay, yeah, I ordered some vertical ICs for the 74, 75, 2000, 5000. So, okay. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I think that's it. So that's trash, and then we'll put that in there. Don't need that. Okay, we'll set that aside. And that's trash. So I'll get this flyback replaced. We'll get it back on the tube and see how it works at that point. Okay, old flyback is out. Brand new flyback is in. I've got the screen pod turned up slightly because they come from the factory turned all the way down. So I turned it up maybe like 1/8 of a turn. And this is the actual DAG wire that I replaced, but it's not needed to be hooked up because there's a ground right there that goes to the neck board and shares the ground. So the frame is going to the neck board, which is then going to the DAG, which I have here on a jumper. So it's all one big ground loop, so you don't actually have to hook up. If you have this ground wire that runs from the frame of the chassis to the neck board and it's tied in with the normal regular DAG ground wire, you can just run a jumper from the frame to the DAG wire on the tube here, which is right there. And you don't actually have to hook that up because it's all a ground is a ground is a ground. So as long as it's grounded to the frame and the frame's grounded to the DAG, it's all good. So that's what that wire is hanging out. So, okay, now that we've replaced that, let's flip this light off and let's see if it works now. I do have an MK1 board hooked up here that we can use for, if this does operate and run, we can use this for adjusting colors and screen size, position, shape, and everything. So, all right, now that we have a good flyback in, let's see if it works this time. 1, 2, 3. And it does appear to operate. Oh, there you go. I absolutely called it. I absolutely called it. When the flyback arcs to the frame, it causes collapse because it usually takes out R91, R92, D13, or D14. Now we checked those components and they appeared to be good, but we'll have to take this back out and double check. And I called it. Every time I've ever seen an issue where the flyback is arcing to the frame and takes out the HOT or voltage regulator, it almost always causes vertical collapse. Case in point, I'm not surprised one bit. So yeah, I guess to take it back out, we'll go through the vertical section and see what we can find as to what's causing that vertical collapse. Let's just check it one more time. And yeah, collapse. Okay, well, that being said, let's pull it back off, see what we can find. So the K7000 is a very simple and easy thing to troubleshoot when it comes to vertical collapse. There's only a very few amount of things that could be causing it. It could be, again, R91, R92 that are in here, D13, D14, the vertical IC itself, or IC2. It's a very limited number of things. So given that we already checked R91, R92, D13, D14, it's likely simply a shorted IC2 or a bad or shorted IC1. No, IC1's here. I forget which IC this one is, but the vertical IC. It's going to be either probably one of these two chips here. Now, the easiest thing to do is to just go to the chip and see if any of the legs read shorted that shouldn't be. So that's what we'll do first. Now, some of these have a jumper. So if we zoom in here, some of these vertical ICs will have a jumper across, I believe, this point to this point, but you can see there's no jumper here on this one. Some of these will read shorted together with this jumper. If you flip this over, there's a spot here for a jumper or a capacitor right there, C66. Sometimes there's a jumper there, sometimes there's a capacitor there, but in this case there's not, depending on what type of IC you've got installed. So we should only have one pin read to ground here, and that's going to be the very first one. So if we go to ground, this should be a dead short to ground, which it is, 0 ohms, and up, there you go. Vertical IC is bad. So if you see here, here is ground, pin 1. Is that pin 1? Yes, pin 1 is ground. You can clearly see pin 1 goes to the big ground plane here. Now if we go to pin 2, 11 ohms to ground. 11.2 ohms, that should not be That should be open to ground. Any other ones read to ground? Nope, just pin 2. So, is it because the vertical IC is shorted, or is it because something else on the trace on the circuit is shorted? So we have to actually remove the vertical IC from the circuit. So let's go back here and review though. So when you have an arcing flyback, it arcs to the frame or whatever, it almost always takes out R91, R92, D13, or D14, but in this case it appeared to not do that, but it did pass through the circuit and zap out the vertical IC. It depends on where the crack is. So in this case, this one, in this case, no pun intended, it appears to have been arcing through the crack in the sealant in here, and it wasn't arcing from, oh, actually, you know what? I think it was arcing from right there. I think it was arcing from here, out of that, because this is all, it's all black around there. I think it's arcing out of this hole right there. So it wasn't arcing directly to the frame. It was arcing out of this hole and likely arcing, well, it was. Instead of arcing to the frame on the side, I think it was arcing out of this hole right there directly to the top of this from the underside. So I think that's what's happening. So I think it zapped ground. It sent all that high voltage on the ground plane straight through to the vertical IC. So sometimes it'll take out R91, R92, D13, D14. Then it'll travel through the ground plane and take out IC1 and or IC, or whatever this vertical IC is here. I keep forgetting. I can't recall which IC. IC3? I think it's IC1, IC2, and IC3. But anything on the ground plane is susceptible, so we still could have a faulty IC2 as well as IC3. As a matter of fact, let's go through and see if any of these pins on IC2 read to ground that shouldn't. Should only have one pin that goes to ground. Okay, here's our ground. Okay, IC2 appears to be fine. So it looks like our only issue might be IC3. So the easiest way to test this is to remove pin 2 from the circuit. Oh, my iron is off. I expected this to work, and I turned the iron off so it wasn't on needlessly, so I'm going to cut away for a couple of minutes while this heats up and come right back. Okay, so we'll just remove IC2, I'm sorry, pin 2 of IC3 from the circuit by just desoldering it. And let's verify that by going to ground. And if we touch the pad is no longer shorted to ground. So here's pin 1. Oh, come on. Okay, there's pin number 1. There's pad number 2. But there's the pin, 12 ohms. So touching the pin directly, 12 ohms. If I touch the pad the pin normally was soldered to, open. So without a doubt, the vertical IC is shorted. So we will remove this from the circuit and we will replace it. I have parts on hand. And believe it or not, nope, there's still one here. There we go. That should come out. But it's never easy getting this one out because it's got 2 screws on here, and I hate removing this one. It's almost easier to remove the entire heat sink because, you know what, let's just remove the entire heat sink. It's just going to be easier that way. He says as the heat sink doesn't come out. It's just the 2 pieces here. You'll see why I'm doing it this way in a minute. Well, if it would, it's not wanting to. Come out of there. Why not, you stinker? There we go. Not getting hot enough, I guess. There we go. Geez. Cry me a river. Okay. So with that out of there, let's clean up these holes here. Make sure we didn't rip anything, and it doesn't appear that we did. So there's clean and or opened up. That one's opened up. All right. I'm gonna turn my fan on here. We've got fumes running everywhere. All right. So that appears to be out and good. Now we can get this out of here, because it's easier to do it that way, because all these components are in the way of trying to get to the screw heads. This is in the way, that's in the way. You can't get a nut on the backside. So we just remove the entire heatsink, and then we can get this out of here much easier. So that being said, I believe these are quarters on the back. Yep. Okay. And it's just that easy. All right. Now, grab my spare parts, and look at that, right on top. That's the 7831, which I've got one right here, and I have another. Nope. I got two 7831s, so I have one more if I need them. I need it. Actually, you know what? I think this is a 7831 also. Let's just dump the whole stupid thing out here. Okay, one 7838. That's the equivalent. Yeah. Okay. So I got two 7831s here. So we'll grab this one here. Actually, we'll grab this one. And this design here, I believe, is for the K7000A, because of course it has to use a different one. All right. Put that away. And we can verify that this one's not shorted by simply going to, if we go to continuity and we go to these two pins, shorted 11 ohms. Go to these two pins on this one, and it's not shorted. So, verified. Shorted voltage, shorted vertical IC. All right. So now we can put this one back in. I can hear you guys screaming already. Are you going to use solder paste? Not solder paste. I'm sorry. Thermal paste. Nope. Not going to use thermal paste. Why? Because I like to live dangerously. And there's a giant heat sink. Oh, that's on backwards. Would have found that out pretty quick. This heat sink is more than sufficient for the heat transfer that this does. So, not going to worry about it. And I'm also not going to tighten these down too much until we. Because this can shift left and right. I want to make sure that we actually have everything lined up before I try to put it in permanently, so to speak. Is that bent over too? I think it is. Okay, now it's straight. Let's clean up some of this on here. if it'll let me. That should be okay. Now, is this going to line up? Yes. Okay. So with that lined up fairly well, we can just go ahead and tighten this up. Not too tight, just snug is all you need. Snug is all you need. And right in there. Ta-da! Back flush. And we can solder it back in. Okay, and now we can get it in frame that where you missed everything I just did. Sorry about that. Trim these legs, and let's clean this up. And there you go, like it was never out. You never know, except for that missing part of the pad. Now we'll test it and see if it still reads shorted. And ground, pin 1, pin 2, nothing. Nothing on the rest of them. Did we create any bridges? Nope. So yeah, I think we're good to go. And now it's time to get it on the tube for take number 3 and see how we do with take number 3. Okay, with the new vertical IC installed, let's cross our fingers and see if take 3 is successful. Here we go, 1, 2, 3. Okay, comes right on. What do we get? Please? Oh, crap. Gosh darn it. Well, uh-oh, we got smoke. I don't know, we had some semblance of smoke here. I don't know if the camera picked that up, but, ooh, yeah, something is burning. R91 is fine. R92. It's unnaturally warm for as quick as we had it on. R91 is cold. And R91's cold. R92 is pretty darn warm. It's not hot. I can keep my finger on it, but again, I can smell it. I can smell something, and we had that little bit of smoke. I don't know if it came through on the camera, but okay. Well, maybe with this being replaced now, now it's causing an issue over here with R91 or R92. I'm telling you, almost always it's one of those two resistors gets taken out, but it tested okay. Well, let's pull it back off and see what else we can find. All right, well, let's just start by making sure our vertical IC is still good and not shorted again. Oh, we just shorted out our vertical IC again, because now it's reading shorted again. Wait a minute. Yes. So something else is bad that took out our replacement vertical IC, and that's not good. Well, you know, I think I just found the problem. Did I do that? I think I just broke. Look at this. Did I break that? I think I broke that pad when I was taking out this heatsink. Well, that's not good. That could have been my fault. So we'll just create a bridge across here. There we go. Oh, you didn't even see it. So I created a bridge across here. Yeah. Gosh darn it. Well, time to take that out again. And R92, I can never remember which one of these are which in here, but there's two resistors in here that are responsible for the 26 volt reference for our deflection for vertical. So there's one right there and one back there. The one back there was very hot compared to this one here. And we tested it before and it was reading properly. If we go to ohms, should be 1.2 ohms. This is the one that was cool, 1.3. This is the one that was hot. Hang on, let's get a better connection on here. 1.3. So that resistor is not open. So that's not our problem. D13 is here. And that is good. And then D14 is the opposite direction, and it's right here. And yeah, 0.3 or so. Like, remember before when I was testing these, I said this one reads about 0.3, and it was reading 0.47 something. This is more of a normal reading, so that's correct. So 13 and 14, D13, 14 are fine. R91, R92 are fine. I wonder if having that capacitor out of circuit is what caused our problem. But I don't think that would have shorted the vertical IC again, because with that back in circuit now, is it still read shorted on pin 2? Yep. Pin 1, that's the ground. Pin 2 is 1 ohm. Dang it. Well, let's take it back out and replace it again. And I wonder if I should change out IC2 also. Now I don't think having this capacitor out of circuit would have damaged that. Because we had that exact same problem with this like that, but I think I broke that when I took this heatsink off. So I think there might be something else. I don't think that's related to this shorting out. I don't think it is. But I'd hate to, I've only got one left. So, I think, well, I have to replace it anyway. So let me get that done. And I'm going to change IC2 also. Because like I say, it's a very simple circuit. It comes out, the 26 volt reference for the vertical deflection comes from the Flyback. It goes through D13, D14, R91, R92. It goes through IC2, and then it goes to the vertical IC. Actually, if you follow the wires here, the green and the yellow for the vertical will come right off of the yoke header pin, and they run right directly over here, directly to the vertical IC. Then it ends up going back through IC2 as well. So, we don't have a short across the windings, do we? Nope. Well, I think I'll change the vertical IC, and I'll change IC2 and put it in a socket with a new one, and then see, because we know that it's not 91, 92, 13, 14. I don't think that capacitor being out of circuit would affect that and cause it to short out. It's possible, but I don't want to run the risk of that because I only have one of these left. So let me change out the vertical IC again. I'll change out IC2, put it in a socket with the new one, and then we'll kind of see what that does from there, because there's not really much else to test. Yeah, there's not really much else to test that would cause this to short out like that. And if we remember, we took the IC out of circuit by removing the pin from the pad, desoldering the pin from the pad to where it wasn't touching anymore, and there wasn't a short. So there's nothing else on the circuit that's shorted, or we would have still had a short on pin 2 with the pin removed. So something is causing it to go out, and I think it might be IC2. Yeah, I don't know. Let me get that work done. We'll come back and see where we're at from that point. Okay, vertical IC is replaced. We are no longer shorted across pins 1 and 2, and I have installed a known good IC2 in a socket. So that's about all I can do. I did remove R91 and R92 and D1314 out of circuit, tested those out of circuit. They tested fine, just like they do in circuit, so I put those back in, and I soldered a wire to the bottom of the chassis on pin 6 of the vertical IC. That's our 26 volt DC input reference from the Flyback through R91, R92, D13, D14. So it's pin 6 on the vertical IC soldered right to this wire, and it's going to the meter. If I don't see 26 volts DC immediately upon power up, I'm shutting it down because I don't have any more of those vertical ICs to put in there. So everything's tested okay. The only anomaly it could possibly be would be a bad IC2, because that can cause vertical collapse, but I don't think it's going to cause the IC to short out. And we had a shorted IC before I even ever took this off and damaged that pad for this capacitor. And when I soldered that new cap in there, that pad was not busted off. So I busted that pad when I took this off initially when replacing that IC, and the IC was shorted beforehand with the same exact problem. So that cap being out of circuit did not cause that short. Something else caused that short, and if it's not IC2, I'm kind of at a loss. So I'm going to monitor this. We're going to try it. I did test also to make sure that we're getting the proper signals and continuity from the pot for vertical size through the harness and the connector all the way to the chassis. So if you got a vertical size pot that's out of circuit, that will cause collapse also, but it won't necessarily cause the IC to short out. So I'm a bit mystified. I also put a fuse in. Since we know it powers up and operates, I put a fuse in there and took the circuit breaker out. So we're all hooked up. Let's try it again here. I'm going to turn it on, and we're going to look for 28 volts DC, or 26 volts DC. And if we don't see it immediately, we're going to shut this down. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. How come I have no power? How come I have no power? We're plugged in. Why do I have no power now? Fuse is in the holder. You know it works. How come I have no power now? Everything's connected. Well, let me see if I can figure out what's going on now. I know what's going on now, at least partially. I had this in continuity mode, so, but the chassis did not energize. I wonder, what do I see with this in volts DC now? Let me see what it reads. I'm gonna turn it on. Yeah, nothing. So I have no high voltage now. Why? Let me see if I can figure out why. Well, found the problem. Some eagle-eyed viewers out there may have already found it before I did, but I went to start testing for input power. You know, it's always the simplest thing first you want to start with. So I went and verified that I was that I was getting 115 volts AC to the input, and I wasn't. I had no voltage at the input wires. I'm like, well, okay, well, there's the problem. So I start looking at this, and my wire busted off here. For my conglomeration here, wire broke off. So all the on and off and on and off and on and off and on and off finally broke the wires. So I have to fix this, then I'll bet you it'll turn on. Okay, for the sake of just getting this done, I went ahead and just lopped off the other wire here and just stripped the wires. I'm using alligator clips to feed the actual chassis now. So now it should power up, and I have the original IC2 installed that I took out of my parts bin that I labeled as, you know, known good, and it never worked with that one in there because the wire broke off for the AC input. So I put that other one in here from the donor chassis out of the parts bin or the parts closet over here, thinking that this one was bad, when it turns out it was just a power input problem. So I put the one from my parts bin back in that I thought was faulty, So we'll test it now. I'm still hooked up here for volts DC for our 26 volt reference. I'm going to turn it on real quick. It should turn on now that this is hooked up. Well, we don't have a broken wire for our AC. It should turn on. If I don't have 26 volt reference, I'm going to turn this off immediately. If I do, hopefully that is the fix, because with 26 volt reference, it should have deflection. And if it does and it operates, then we simply had a faulty IC2, which is completely common when the flyback arcs to the frame like that. So let's find out. 1, 2, 3. 25 volts, okay. And please. How come I have no raster now? I don't see any smoke, but I have no raster. Brightness all the way up. Contrast is all the way up. I had raster before with the other IC2, and now I have no raster. The flyback is all the way up and no raster. Turn all the way down and then about 1/8 of the way up. How come I have no raster now? We're going backwards. Well, the raster is generated by IC1. I had raster before. Is IC1 bad now? I don't know. Let's replace or check out IC1 if there's anything going on with that. See, do I have net glow? If you have high voltage and net glow but no raster, it's almost always IC1. What? But I had raster. It was collapsed. We saw it. Do I have net glow? No, I have no net glow. Nothing. I'm telling you. This is turning into a repair from hell, guys and gals. I do not want to put in another IC2, or the original I should say. I do not want to put in this original one, because with this one in there, the vertical IC was shorting. It may still be shorted again, but if we look at it, you can see how it looks like part of it got very hot on the right over here. But I had raster with this one, but it was taking out the vertical IC, hypothetically. Now that I've replaced it, I have no raster. Well, let me check out IC1 and see what I can find. Well, I found the problem, and it's not good. When I last left you, I was talking about IC1 being changed out. I was going to change that out. I thought that might be the problem. It's not. I put a socket in there with a new IC1. Didn't fix anything. Still no net glow. Still no raster. No nothing. And it was mystifying because this was working prior to replacing IC2. We just had the collapse and the shorting vertical IC. Well, after we changed out IC2, then we got our proper 26 volt reference, and this is not shorted anymore. After taking this off the tube to replace IC1, I tested this again, and it's no longer shorted. It's not shorting anymore, and we have our proper 26 volt reference, which means our original IC2 was definitely bad. But after changing out the IC2, we never got raster again. Never got net glow, never got raster again. And I thought maybe I had cracked the board when trying to take this heatsink out, all that kind of stuff, and no, that wasn't the case. It turns out that when you have no net glow but high voltage, you need to check your 6.3 heater voltage reference. And I had 6.3 volts at the heater pin on the back of the neck here. So I had heater voltage, but I had no net glow. The only way that could be possible is if the tube is bad. So I took the neck board off, and I took the guide off, and sure enough, my heater voltage pin, where's it at? This one, the heater voltage pin, is non-compos mentis. We have a busted heater voltage pin. All these times of the neck board going on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. I always put it on carefully. Well, let's do it this way. There we go. I always take great care when I put these on and off to go on, make sure it's tight, and then I push with two hands to go straight on. or 2 fingers. I push with 2 fingers to go straight on, and I use 2 fingers to pull straight off. But even after all these attempts of on and off, it finally broke a pin, and it just happened to be the heater voltage pin. So I'm going to have to go grab another tube to continue testing this chassis with, and later in the future I'll have to see if I can repair this. I have a procedure to repair this. I can do it. The tube still has vacuum, so I'm going to try and repair this in the future, but for now there's no way to get this to work. So we're going to have to say goodbye to this tube for now and replace it, or repair it I should say, in the future. But now let me grab another tube that will support a 7000 and see if replacing IC2 has fixed our collapse problem, because we've never been able to find out since changing that out. So let's do that, see how it turns out. Okay, we got a dedicated K7000 set up here. So we got our problem chassis now on the K7000 tube, and we need to turn it on now and see if our collapse problem is solved after replacing IC2. I think that is really pretty much where we left off before we started having problems with the tube that ended up being the broken pin. So let's turn it on here and see what happens now. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it comes on and operates. Do we have full raster? Yes, we do. Holy crap. Okay, well, IC2 appears to have been the culprit for the shorting vertical IC. Brightness down, black level down. Turn this up until we get raster lines right there. Let's focus it up a bit, roughly there. Back down until they just go away, roughly there. Now brightness back up until we get background not black, and then back down until it just goes black. Contrast up to roughly, I'll say there. H position needs to shift over. And there you go. Vertical size comes down, vertical position down. Okay, vertical size again. Well, there you go. Colors are wrong, but of course that's because they are all dead center and need to be adjusted and stuff, but that's a little bit too green. I wonder if I could just simply turn the green down slightly and have it be good. Let's do green drive. Yeah, not too bad. But, nah, it needs tweaking, but this video is already long enough. Well, there you have it. So we had a pin that busted on the picture tube that was keeping, we had a busted pin on the picture tube that was keeping the heater voltage from getting to the heater, so that was the cause of the no raster and no heater glow. So we had a bad pin on the tube that bit us in the butt, but initially with the chassis, as far as the chassis is concerned, we had a arcing flyback that took out the HOT, took out the voltage regulator, took out IC2, which in turn took out the vertical IC. I don't remember which one of these was the original one, doesn't matter. May not have been in that order, but we had those faulty components, which took out the fuse also. Then we had a bunch of corroded pots and a broken pot as well. And then we had a destroyed remote board that we brought back to life. So, and it all works. So in all, we had a bunch of bad pots, bad broken pots. We had 4 faulty components and a blown fuse. Well, 5 components if you include the flyback. So there's the review. Yeah, after replacing those faulty components and doing the cap kit and reflow and finally getting it on a tube that's not bad, it's working. So, yeah, there you have it. I'm not going to do the adjustments. This is good enough for the video. It's long enough as it is, like I said. So, oh man, you know, when like I say, when you've got high voltage but no heater glow, no net glow, and how do I phrase this? When you've got proper 6.3 voltage at the heater circuit on R213, so R213 there is responsible for your heater voltage. So if that reads good and you got 6.3 volts at the point on the back of the neck for the heater voltage pin, then you're only real possibility of being at fault is the tube itself, and that was the case here. That's how I found it. I measured R213. It read 0.7 ohms. It's supposed to be 0.68. So it read 0.7 ohms. That was correct. I had 6.3 volts at the heater voltage pin on the back of the neck, but the heater wasn't working. So I checked to make sure the pin was secure, and it wasn't. That's how I found it was broken. So that was the cause of that issue, was a bad pin. Otherwise, yeah, we've gone over the review of what's wrong, so I'm just flustered. I'm sorry for repeating myself. It's been about 5 hours I've been working on this thing, trying to get this thing up and running, and this has been one of the most head-scratching experiences of all this endeavor I've done, because all these endeavors I've done, because of that stupid broken pin just threw me for a loop. So it happens. It was bound to happen at some point. So again, hopefully you learned something. I appreciate you following along on all these videos and everything like that. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications on when the videos are live. I appreciate it. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.